welcome back. I'm Melissa Pineda, and today I will be discussing the book A Christian Manifesto by Francis Schaeffer. So he wrote this book in 2009, and he talks about why morality and freedom have crumbled in our society. And it's essentially like a book that is like a call to action for Christians and people everywhere. He encourages us to reestablish our Judeo-Christian roots and regain our morals and freedoms. So before I get into the book, if there's anything today that you hear that you like or find interesting, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. In this book, Schaeffer talks about how not all laws are good, and therefore some should not be followed. He also talks about how law is king, but only the law and laws that are inherent laws from God alone. He says that in government, law, and life, Christians have to reestablish their Judeo-Christian foundations and regain the freedoms that they had previously not lost as much as abandoned due to primarily moral decadence. He also talks about the question of the dignity of human life. He talks about fetuses that are aborted. He talks about how this is directly linked to God because God created man in his image, and this doesn't just start when man is born, of course. So when they're initially created, when he says that God made them in his image and they have a unique dignity of life as human beings. So Schaeffer talks about this central issue of abortion and the intrinsic value of human life. And he says that the state and humanistic law have no right and no authority to take human life arbitrarily in the way they have been taking it. He says that a majority of Americans were actually against abortion, but the courts in the US decided to make abortion legal, and lawmakers and Christians should have sounded the alarms at this point, and they just did not. Like, he talks a lot about how Christians just kind of gave up a lot of their freedoms and a lot of the things that they stood for, which is interesting. He says that we have forgotten why we even have Judeo-Christian values to begin with. We have taken them for granted. He says that we have forgotten that none of our freedoms are actually natural in the world, so they are unique based on the fact that the consensus was the biblical one. Schaeffer says that we have to oppose the whole humanist system, regardless of whether it's liberals or conservatives behind it at whatever time. So Christians should not align themselves with either side exclusively on the basis of the name it uses, because that can change depending on who's leading the party at the time. There's no difference, he says, between these political sides if they're operating from a humanist basis. He says that we are not to obey the state no matter what, so we can't just obey the state blindly. He says that civil government stands under the law of God. If the state commands something that is opposed to the word of God, they are not to be followed. We have a duty to disobey the state in some cases. And he says that early Christians who refused to offer sacrifices to the emperor, for instance, they refused it, and it was looked at as a political offense. But that's not what they were doing. For them, it was not a political stance they were taking. They were acting based on their moral obligation to God, and he's saying that we need to do the same. Schaeffer talks a lot about this idea of Lex Rex, so the law being king. But again, the law coming from God. And he says the law is founded on the law of God. If there is no final place, he says, for civil disobedience, then the government has been made autonomous and therefore has been put in place of the living God. So this book is like one big call to action. It's really interesting. It's one of a kind. I haven't read anything like it. I really enjoyed it. So if anything you've heard today sounds interesting, I encourage you to pick yourself up a copy. There's a lot in there. And also, if there's anything that you liked, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.